told me I was born to heal. Hurt me so my soul would feel. Pain is love, love is real. Bleed for him, and you will heal.
This is Creepy Crossroad, where history, horror, and the unexplained meet at the crossroads where every turn leads somewhere darker. What would you do if the man who claimed to save your soul started to break your bones instead? Because that's what happened. Not in some medieval torture chamber, not in a horror movie, in Canada, in the 1980s, in the woods. He called himself a prophet, and what started as a commune became a nightmare built on blood, broken minds, and absolute control. This isn't folklore, it's not a ghost story, it's real. And it's worse than anything we could have made up. This is the Anthill Kids. Let's go back to where it all began. Roch Thoreau was born in 1947 in Saguenay, Quebec, and at first there was nothing too unusual about his early life. He was raised in a strict Catholic home, one of 7 children, and grew up under a very heavy thumb of religious doctrine. His father was part of the White Berets, a conservative Catholic movement that marched their kids from door to door handing out pamphlets about God's wrath. I mean, to each his own, I guess. So, normal wasn't exactly in the cards, but Roch didn't want normal. He was smart, charming, and disturbingly persuasive from a very young age. By the way, this smoke right here, it's one of these because we're in the middle of woods. As a teenager, he became obsessed with the Old Testament, especially the wrath, the plagues, the end of times. He loved the idea of prophecy, of divine punishment, and being chosen. Not saved, chosen. In his 20s, he left Catholicism behind and bounced around from religious group, eventually joining the Seventh-day Adventist Church, but even that wasn't enough. He didn't want to follow doctrine, he wanted to rewrite it, with him as the center. By the late 1970s, Roch started preaching his own twisted gospel. He claimed the world was on the brink of destruction, that a nuclear apocalypse was coming, and that only he could save the righteous. And surprise, the righteous just happened to be a small group of people that decided to follow him into the woods and give him everything. His elevator pitch? God speaks to me directly. I've been chosen to lead the elect through the end of times. Follow me or die with the sinners. He told people their families were poisoned by sin, that medicine was evil, that the outside world was corrupt and cursed. If they left him, they'd die in the fire fury of the Armageddon. If they stayed, they'd be spared, protected, loved. He built his following slowly, mostly through spiritual workshops and small-town gatherings. And then in 1977, he took it a step further. He declared himself a prophet, not a messenger of God, but God's voice. He began gathering a core group of followers, people who were lonely, hurting, scared, people looking for a purpose, and he offered them exactly what they wanted: community, direction, certainty, all under the illusion of salvation. At first, it just looked like a simple religious commune, a little odd maybe, but peaceful. But what they didn't know was this: Roch Thoreau wasn't planning to guide them to heaven, he was going to drag them into hell. So how does a failed prophet go from door-to-door evangelism to leading a full-blown cult in the woods? It started the way these things usually do, slowly. In the late 70s, Roch declared mainstream churches corrupt and claimed only he could lead the righteous through the upcoming apocalypse. And not just some vague fire and brimstone, he gave it a date: 1979. We seem to be doing okay. He said God had chosen him to build an ark, like literally an ark, and only his hand-picked followers, his so-called chosen, would be saved. He then moved them deep into the Quebec wilderness. There, isolated from the world, Roch ramped up the control. He banned sugar, alcohol, contact with the outsiders, even books, except for the Bible and, of course, his own scribbled ramblings. The outside world will damn you. Only I can save you. Then came the rebrand. He called their new home the Anthill, saying they were like little ants, dutiful and tirelessly working. He renamed them the Anthill Kids, stripping them of identity and adulthood all in one fell swoop. Infantilization 101. It sounds absurd, but it worked. Many of his followers were lost, recovering from addiction, or escaping abuse. They wanted peace, they wanted to believe in something, and Rock offered answers, wrapped in scripture and fear. He played every role: prophet, father, judge, surgeon, God, and each year, the rules just got harsher and harsher. The punishments became more brutal. By the early 80s, the anthill wasn't a commune anymore. It was a kingdom built on obedience, ruled by fear, hidden behind trees that kept its secret so very well. And no one on the outside had any idea what was really going on there. But on the inside, things were about to get horrific. Now, I do have to stop you guys here. I am putting up a big content warning. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. The following section contains first-hand testimony and graphic descriptions of abuse, torture, sexual violence, and this is not dramatized. These were real crimes committed against real people. If you're sensitive to this kind of content, please skip ahead to this time. If you're ready, let's continue. Let's talk about what really happened behind the anthill facade. What Rock Turow did to his followers wasn't just manipulation. It was methodical, grotesque torture under the guise of spiritual salvation. And the person who endured the worst of it was Gabrielle LeVay. She wasn't just a follower, she believed in him. She thought he was a prophet, chosen, holy, the answer to everything broken in her life. But faith doesn't protect you from monsters. Sometimes it delivers them to you. It started with the nail. He accused her of disobedience, so he took a hammer and drove a nail straight through her hand, pinning her to the floor like some twisted crucifixion. She lay there screaming, bleeding, while he preached about sacrifice. But that wasn't enough. In another so-called cleansing ritual, he cut off part of her breast with a kitchen knife. She complained about pain. His solution? Surgical manipulation. No anesthesia, just pain. And divine justification. And when Gabrielle tried to leave the group, he punished her in a way that made sure that she would never try again. He tied her down, took a meat cleaver, and amputated her arm. Just like that. No numbing, no care, just a red-hot iron he heated in the fire and used it to cauterize the wound while she thrashed around screaming in agony. She lived, but her belief in him didn't. Not after that, and I don't blame her one bit. And she wasn't his only victim. One male follower... Okay, now, again, viewer discretion. Just forewarning here. One of his male followers went to him complaining that he was suffering from lustful thoughts. Rock claimed he needed to be purified. His cure? A sledgehammer to the groin. I'm not kidding. He took a sledgehammer and he crushed this man's testicles. Just obliterated them. Now let's be clear, this wasn't punishment for a crime, this was punishment for thoughts. The man somehow survived this, but I don't think you can ever truly come back from something like that. Now, Rock, as a self-proclaimed doctor and everything else in this world, loved to perform surgeries, and not real ones. Crude, horrific butcher jobs. He used knives, pliers, even blowtorches. He claimed he could cure ailments by cutting out the evil. He performed enemas, circumcisions, abdominal surgeries on men and women alike. Gabrielle was made to undergo multiple procedures. At one point, she was forced to lie still while he made incisions along her stomach to relieve spiritual pressure. This man is an absolute pile of by the devil. I swear to God, this man should be rotting in hell. The worst surgery he ever performed was on Solange Bollard. She came to him with stomach aches. That's it. And Rock, he decided she needed surgery. Laid her on a wooden table, cut open her abdomen with a kitchen knife, no medical tools, just blades in his ego, removed a portion of her intestines, and poured hot molasses and olive oil into her stomach, stitched her back up, and she bled out. Slowly, in agony, and then she died. But it didn't stop there. He later dug up her corpse from the shallow grave he'd buried her in and brought her into the commune's chapel. There, in front of others, he performed a ritual. on her corpse as he told the others she would be resurrected. I mean, I know there's disturbing people in this world, but what the dude? Like, this is, yeah, there was definitely something not right there. He said her death was their fault, that they didn't pray hard enough for her. So, of course, can't take accountability for anything. Now let's go back to Gabrielle. She became pregnant by Rock. Again, something he decided, not her. He had fathered 20 children across the commune by this point, and during an argument, he grew enraged and punched her in the stomach, hard enough to cause. She began to bleed, but instead of accepting the truth, Rock turned the violence up a notch, and he told her the carriage wasn't real. He said that she was trying to defy him, trying to expel the child against God's will. He punched her again and again and again, repeatedly. While she was bleeding, he said he was trying to force the fetus back into her body. This was probably, this story was really hard to do. Like, this is dark. He believed punishment could reverse biology. Or maybe he just wanted to watch her suffer. Yes, he actually believed that. Or maybe he just wanted them to. And all those children that were born, they were born into a nightmare and they were never safe. Left out in the snow, made to eat bugs, feces, and even dead mice. One child was forced to eat his own vomit. And the mothers, they were told to give birth in freezing cabins without help, in pain and solitude, because suffering was holy. Rock assigned women to himself. There was no real marriages, just commandments. He decided who bore children, he decided who raised them, and he decided how much pain they were all allowed to feel. He told followers to punish themselves. One woman was told to break her own legs to prove her loyalty. And she did. Like, I get there's a bunch of psychology behind this, but oh my God. Talk about groupthink syndrome, isolation, and Stockholm, like Jesus. Another follower was told to strip naked in front of the group during a sermon and stand outside in the freezing cold to repent. He used starvation, humiliation, peer pressure, and the slow stripping of humanity to maintain his grip. He would deny food, sleep, warmth, care, love. He even forced his followers to turn on one another, punishing those who didn't comply with the beatings or worse. This wasn't a spiritual commune. This was psychological warfare. Now back to poor Gabrielle. At this point, she was mutilated, brainwashed, and half dead. But something in her refused to give up. After years of unspeakable torment, Gabrielle had nothing left to lose, except her life, and even that she realized was on borrowed time. By 1989, she had endured decades of sadistic abuse. The mutilation of her breast, the amputation of her arm, the constant surveillance, starvation, isolation, and brainwashing. But something inside her, whatever hadn't broken, snapped awake. She waited until Rock left the commune to run an errand. Rare, but it did happen. He trusted that his hold on them was enough to briefly leave, thinking nobody would dare disobey him. Arrogant. But he was wrong. Gabrielle took advantage of the sliver of freedom. With one arm and a body barely held together by scars, she stumbled 6 miles through knee-deep snow and barefoot to the nearest town. Alone, bloody, weak, in shock, but alive, she made it to a hospital. Doctors were horrified. They treated her as a trauma patient, and when they asked what happened, she told them everything. Every surgery, every act of violence, every moment of indoctrination, her story was so unbelievable, the doctors didn't think it could be possible until they examined her. The wounds, her missing arm, the precision of the burns, it all matched. And that was the beginning of the end. Her statements launched a full investigation. When police raided the commune, they found exactly what she described. Makeshift operating rooms, medical supplies not meant for medicine, malnourished children, terrified adults, and silence. By the time they had arrived, Rock had already fled. Into the woods like the coward that he was. He didn't get far. They found him within days, drunk, dirty, wandering, still clutching his Bible, still thinking he was untouchable. At Rock's trial in 1993, the courtroom fell silent as survivor after survivor took the stand. Gabrielle LeVay gave the most damning testimony. She described in chilling detail all the horrific events that took place while she was there. Medical experts confirmed her injuries, matching her story, scar patterns, burn marks, and the missing arm. Other cult members broke down on the stands. Some wept, some sat stone-faced, still clearly under the residue of brainwashing. The prosecution laid out over 40 charges, including assault, aggravated sexual assault, criminal negligence causing death, and unlawful confinement, along with desecration of a body. Not all of them stuck, but enough did. The jury didn't deliberate for long. Roch Turow was sentenced to life in prison without parole. He sat in his chair, unmoved, still wearing that arrogant smirk, still believing he'd return as the prophet. He wouldn't. Just throwing that out there, Roch, you're not that special. In prison, Roch became a pariah, hated by his inmates, guarded heavily. His delusions continued. He wrote letters to former followers, tried to reestablish contact, and while incarcerated, Roch maintained contact with several women who still viewed him as a spiritual leader. I don't know how. Despite the grotesque and widely publicized details of his crimes, he retained a disturbing level of influence over a few remaining followers. One of these women, who had previously been a part of the cult, stayed loyal even after his conviction. She frequently visited him in prison, and over time, they legally married while he was still behind bars. Prison regulations in Canada allowed for conjugal visits and legal marriages under strict supervision, and somehow he manipulated the system to make it happen. Even more disturbing, this marriage resulted in a child. The child was conceived during one of those conjugal visits at the Dorchester Penitentiary in New Brunswick. There are limited public records on the child's name and the current status, likely to protect their identity, but it's confirmed through multiple sources, including interviews with former cult members, that Roch had at least one more biological child while in prison. This final shocking act highlights how his manipulative reach continued even after his supposed fall from power, adding another layer of psychological horror to an already nightmarish legacy. But in 2011, Roch met his final reckoning. His cellmate, Matthew Gerard MacDonald, had had enough. He stabbed Roch in the neck with a handmade shiv, walked straight up to the guard station and said, "That piece of is down on the range. Here's the knife. I've sliced him up." Just like that, it was over. Not saying that murder is good. Roch died the way he lived in his final years, powerless, alone, and forgotten. But the pain he left behind didn't die with him. Dozens of survivors, children born into terror, scars sometimes visible, some buried. And yet there is strength in the stories survivors tell. Gabrielle didn't just escape. She burned the cult to the ground with the truth. And sometimes, that's the most powerful kind of justice there is. It's easy to ask, how does something like this happen? How does a man like Roch convince dozens of people to abandon their lives, surrender their bodies, and follow him into the abyss? But the better question is, how do we make sure that this never happens again? Because Roch wasn't a sorcerer, he wasn't superhuman, he was a predator. And predators thrive in silence, in isolation, and in manipulation. He used religion like a scalpel, carving fear and obedience into the minds of his followers. He used pain as proof of his power, and he used love, the desperate need for it, to trap people in his web. Cult psychology isn't about belief, it's about control. The 3 stages are almost always the same. Love bombing, flattery, affection, promise of salvation. Isolation, cutting people off from family, community, and reality. Fear, the threat of punishment, hell, shame, or worse. When you mix all that with a charismatic narcissist who thinks they're God, you get someone like Roch. But here's the eerie part. He's not alone. There are echoes of him in Jonestown, in the People's Temple. There are still cults today, still prophets, still predators, which is why it's so important to talk about what happened. At Roch's trial, survivors testified in painstaking detail. Some broke down, others spoke with calm clarity. Gabrielle herself said, "I wasn't human anymore. I was a shell, something he created and broke, again and again." And still, she spoke. Roch Turow was sentenced to life in prison. The real legacy, it doesn't belong to Roch. It belongs to those who survived him. To the children who grew up in nightmares and broke the cycle, to the women who bore pain and still chose to live, to Gabrielle who didn't just escape, she testified, published, and fought back. Their strength is what keeps the darkness from spreading. Their stories are warning signs. And if we listen, really listen, we can be the firewall that stops the next prophet before he rises. Survivors like Gabrielle LeVay prove that the worst prisons can be broken. Oh, let's take a breath for a second. I didn't like that story. But if you need a second to shake that off, I don't blame you. This one was one of the darkest chapters we've stepped into so far. And if you stuck with me all the way through, I hope you'll carry these survivor stories with the weight that they deserve. And next time, let's just say the horror is ancient. The ground beneath your feet, it may not be as solid as it seems. So make sure you like, subscribe, and drop a comment if you're still breathing. I want to know what you think, and I always want to know where you dare to go next. So until next time, stay creepy.